guys, and welcome back to this beautiful YouTube channel. I educate you on how to use Civil 3D to do your job. So today I'm going back to do another video on point groups. And if you watched the previous video, we discussed about creation of point groups using one of the methods. And today you're going to explore other methods that you can use to create point groups. So let's get started. I have opened a blank drawing here without any points, as you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the points into the drawing. So I go to the point creation tools, and then I'll navigate it where I have saved the points that I want to use. So these are the points that I want to use in this exercise, and then I'll select the coordinate, the point format, which is point name, northern, eastern, point level, and row description. But please note that the first column is under name, but I want us to change this to be the point number. So what you do is you select the manage formats button, then you go into you select the relevant point, which is the PNEZD, and you click on modify, and then change the column under name to point number, and then you click OK. And now you can see that the first column now will recognize the characters as point number. Then I'll click OK so that the points are imported into my drawing. Now these points have been imported into the drawing and are contained in the all points group, which is a default point group in Civil 3D. So the last time I showed you how to create a point group here, I showed you how to create a point group and specify the points using just the row description. So any points that have the row description matching what you have put into this row, those points are going to be put into one point group. So today I want us to look at these other methods. We want to create point groups with numbers, with levels, with names, and also with the full descriptions. So let's start with we want to create the first one with the point group with numbers matching. So I'll close that first, and then I'm going to open this file so that you can be able to see what we are going to do. So this is a file that we have just imported into the drawing. So you can see that the text file has a number of points, and these points have been labeled differently. They have been labeled with the point number, the northing, the easting, the elevation, and the row description, and they are separated by comma. So you can be able to create a point group using a series of point numbers. For instance, I want to include the point number 115 to point number 121 in one point group known as flow line, because these points represent a flow line, as you can see in the row description. So I'll go back to Civil 3D I'll create a new point group. I'll call it flow line, and I want to include numbers matching. We just said 115 to 121. 115 to 121. If you click apply and go to points list, you should be able to see that the points from number 115 to 121 have been added to the point list. You can include other numbers by using a comma, then going back to the file and selecting another series of numbers, say 112, 113. These are points that you know are labeled as a flow line. I think that should be it. And if you click apply, these points should be listed here. And that's why you can see you have the point number 112, 113, then 115 up to 121. You can then specify the point label style and point style and a point label style, and then you click apply and OK. If you right click that point group and click select, so you can see now the point group has been selected. That is, the points within the point group have been selected. I'll do one thing here. I'm going to create a new point group. Like I told you last time, if you want to hide the all points, you have to create a hidden point group with all points but with a non-point style and non-point label style. And then I'm going to include all points. As you can see, this point group contains all points but it has no style, so no points are going to be displayed on the drawing. So if I move on to the hierarchy here and I move the flow line points above the hidden point group, that means now my flow line points should be visible. As you can see, you can use that trick to switch on and off between the point groups that you are working on. So if I'm working on the point groups on the flow lines, I can just bring the flow line point group to the top, just above the hidden point group. Then once I finish working on the flow line, I can move on to the next point group. So while you're working with the flow line, you can just select the layer that you're working on, and then you can snap the nodes. Then you can use the polyline tool to join your points. And so once you are done, you can move on to the next points group. So the next method I'm going to show you is creating a point group using levels. So I want us to create a point group of points with levels with 0 elevation. So I want us to isolate all points with 0 elevations in the drawing so that we can analyze which points were picked in the field with 0 elevation and what do they mean. So I'm going to use just the basic point style and the point number and description. Then I'm going to make sure that in the include tab, I'm going to select with elevations matching 0. So this will now make Civil 3D look into the drawing and put the points that have 0 elevations into one point group. I'm going to click apply, and in the points list, now all the points that have 0 elevations have been listed. Mostly you can see that these points could be the calculated corners or corners which were picked in the field without elevations. You can use this point group to isolate and to remove these points from a surface, because basically when you're creating a surface, you would not want to include elevations that are 0. And that's it. We move forward. Before we move forward, actually, there's something that I have just remembered. In this, when you're creating points using numbers, you can actually use selection in the drawing. You can click on selection set in the drawing, and then you click a window, or you can click individual points in the drawing. And that should include those points that have been selected in the drawing in the points list. So on to the next one. I'm going to create another point group here, and this time round I would want to use names. Before I come back to names, I'm going to discuss the full descriptions first. When you're dealing with the full descriptions, Civil 3D in most cases treats the raw descriptions as full description. Let me show you what I mean. If you come here to the all points command and you click on edit points, when you click on edit points, you get another window here where you can edit these points, and you can see now the points have been put into columns: point number, listing, thing, point level, point name, raw description, full description. You can see that now full description is the same as the raw description for all the points in the drawing. So that means the Civil 3D usually translates this raw description this is the last column, which is the raw description. They just interprets that as the full description, but you can change if you want. You can edit. I'm not sure if you can edit. You can just edit the description. Notice that if you edit the raw description, the full description updates automatically. Yes. And now moving forward, we go back to the point group creation. And I'm going to show you how you create this point group using the full description. You're going to use a particular type of fence known as an iron fence. So I'm going to include all points with full descriptions matching this code here, iron FNC. So if I paste that description there and I click on apply, this means that all points that have the full description iron FNC are going to be put into this point group. But remember, this method is also similar to this one above here, because the code used in the full description is the same used in the raw description. So you can use you can just use the raw descriptions matching and not use the full description matching, or you can use either of them interchangeably. So if you use that, I'll get points number 132 to number 135, and if I decide to use the raw description, I'm still getting the same results. That tells you that the raw description is similar to the full description in Civil 3D. And I'm going to use my point style as usual. And if you select the iron fence point group and you click on select, you should be able to select the points that are within that point group. So the last method is creating the points using the point names. What I want you to note is that my points here do not have point names. We have the point number, we have the easting, we have the northing, we have the elevation, no point name. We have the raw description and we have the full description. So the codes in this field work were collected using point numbers, not point names. But in other scenarios, you'll realize that in the field you may label some points using the point names in the first column. This is what I mean. If I open this point data here, you'll see that the points have been labeled using names. For example, the wooden fence have been labeled using F1, F2, F3. The iron fences have been labeled using F4, F5, F6, and F7. And then the chain link fence has been labeled using the CLF1, CLF2, 3, and 4. So what we're going to do is we are going to import this file into the drawing. And once I import this file into the drawing, I am going to use this specific name to put all the points that have the iron fence and the wooden fence into one point group. And then I'm going to create another point group for the chain link fence using the specific name labeled in the field. So let's go back into the Civil 3D. I'm going to import another set of points here. Navigate to where I have saved the points, and now you can see that Civil 3D now detects that there is no point format match found. Why? The reason is that the current point file format have the first column specified as point number and not a point name. So what we have to do is we have to change that within the point file formats editing window. You just select you should be using this point northing, easting, Z, and D, delimited. So we are going to modify that and change that to point name. It should be okay now. So once you have changed the point number, point name, you can opt to include these points in a singular point group using this option here, or you can also create a new point group. But for this video, I'm not going to create a point group using this method. So I'll just import these points into the drawing directly, and you can see now the points have been imported. We have the points that have the names F1 to F7, and the CLF point names have also been labeled. So what I want us to do is I'm going to delete that so that I can show you. I'm also going to update the hidden point groups point group to include the newly imported points. So we go on to creating the first point group. We're going to call it the fence type 1. The fence type 1 is that these are the points that have the F name, meaning they have been labeled using F1, F2, F3, all the way maybe up to F20 or up to F50. So what you do, once you specify the point style and the point label style, you include just you make sure that this box is ticked with names matching F, then put an asterisk. This means that all the points that have the F letter as the starting name will be included in this point group. Then I'm going to click apply, and you can see that in the points list we have the points that have the names F1, F2, F3, F4 up to F7. This asterisk helps you now to avoid including all the points that have to include all the point names, that is F1, F2. You cannot type all that into this, but if you can, well and good. But for a trick or for a shortcut, you can just use an asterisk, so that should be okay. The next one is the fence type 2. Fence type 2, I'm going to use just the similar point style and point label style, and I'm going to include the points with the names matching CLF and then an asterisk after. So this means that the program is going to look for the points that have the point names starting with CLF, as I showed you in the points. If you look at the raw data here, you can see that the points have the CLF1, CLF2, 3, 4, but I just indicated the CLF. So the program is going to look for the points that have the CLF point names and include that in that point group. So you can see that the points that are starting with a CLF name are the CLF1, 2, 3, and 4. But because I use the asterisk, I do not need to include all these names in the names matching format. So I'm going to click OK. Now you can see the point groups have been updated in the drawing. So another thing I wanted to comment is that when you are doing the point groups, you can use the exclude command same way as you have used the include command. This is what I mean. If you want to exclude a number of points within that point group, you can use these options to exclude them. Say for instance, in this CLF, which is a chain link fence point group, I want to exclude point that has the point number 1140. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to exclude points with numbers matching 1140. And so once I do that, I'm going to click apply. Once I click apply, you see that now this point has been excluded from the point group. So you only have 3 points remaining. So if I do not want to exclude any points, I'll just make sure no boxes have been ticked. So you can exclude the points with the numbers, with levels, with names, with the row description, or with full descriptions. So that is that for today. But before we end the video, please make sure you subscribe in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Thank you, and we meet in the next video.